you don't have hope for Signal.
Ballpark Nation presents. Welcome to Go Go Astros, your look at the two-time World Series champions from three guys who have been here since Art Howe had hair.
We are back with Go Go Astros, and we are doing it for the first time this season from the home studio. So, guys have done some redecorating.
Astros.
What do you think?
We are doing it for the first time this season from
Got a little, I did a little mixing and matching of stuff. It's not just baseball anymore; it's all kind of intertwined. So, I don't know.
Feels like more stuff.
Oh, it's more stuff. Yeah, I just did
baseball anymore. It's all kind of
segregate. Somebody on our team has their sound on, so we need them to turn that off.
I just did baseball.
So I don't know who that was.
Not me.
Let's get that fixed. All right, we are back here, guys. I am rocking the new Space Cowboys jersey. As you can tell, I'm doing everything I can to avoid talking about anything but the weekend's performance of the Houston Astros. Brian saw some of it in person.
Everything I can to avoid.
How was it, man?
Anything but the weekend.
It was
Houston Astros. Brian
punchless.
Saw some of it in person.
I went to the Saturday game and they got 3 hits.
But
It was.
Hey guys, real quick, if you have your window, any window on but the show, please turn it off. Just close it out. Somebody's on. Okay. All right, Brian. Sorry, we're starting that again. We're like the Astros. We're all over the place. Brian, how was it in the ballpark? You got to see the losses. One of them.
Yeah, I got to see them 3 hits, one actual bunt, 1 swinging bunt. So apparently they should have bunted more. Their success with that was better than trying to hit the ball. Well, the force was not with them on May 4th.
No, it wasn't. Andy, first of all, how are you? Are you waterlogged? Or are you dry yet?
No, because the expanse of Harris County, as we all understand, is vast and covers many different regions. And where it's flooding 25 miles north of me, we got a couple inches of rain here in Houston proper. So knock on wood, we're lucky. And I think most of the rain's over, but it's going to feel like 105 tomorrow because May 7th. Yeah, the good news about Saturday's game, the bunt wasn't debated endlessly on Twitter because it was only 1 of 3 hits. And normally if you see somebody in Major League Baseball bunt, you have to go the back and forth about how bunts are worthless and why are we doing that versus the guys who wish we would bunt more. So that didn't happen. So that was pleasant.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess it was the only, not only the 1 of 3 hits, but the only RBI, right, in the game. Is that correct? Do I have that correct?
Well, yeah. And I also think it's something that Astros fans need to accept a little bit, and this is not a William Clayton statement, but the Mariners have really good pitching. They have really, really good pitching, and where they've devoted a lot of their developmental pieces in their organization is to drafting well and bringing those pitchers up. So, Logan Gilbert and Bryce Miller are really, really good pitchers. The Astros performed a lot better against Bryce Miller than I was expecting them to yesterday, even though they ended up coming up short because of the bullpen, which is a whole different topic on this show.
Yeah, although, Brian, I guess it does make it even more to Andy's point, the Mariners put a lot of development into pitching, not so much offense, and yet you still gave up 10 runs in 2 games, which I think is the frustrating part, because if you give up 1 fewer run, you end up taking the series and feeling a lot different this morning.
Yeah, and we've talked in general about they dug themselves such a big hole early in the season, and up through Friday, right? They'd won I think 6 of 8 games. So you're like, hey, if they keep they're doing what they need to do, and now they've leveled off and have a tough series coming up with the Yankees against one of the best teams in the American League. So it doesn't get easier.
Yeah, I think let's start at the beginning. Then they do win Friday, and we can argue whether the win was lucky or not. Brian, to your point, the Mariners had a toot blonde, but we've lost a lot of games for being up unlucky. I'll take it. Friday night, you're looking at 5 games down. You're thinking to yourself, if you can get 1 more, you at least made a game up on the standings. And now all of a sudden, that emotional hole that we've talked about is now a real one. And we are 2-3 weeks from Memorial Day, which is what we always talk about on this show. And we're looking at potentially being, like, to me, guys, if the Astros are 10 games back on Memorial Day, then that's a real beginning to figure out what you're going to do this season. Andy, you think that's a correct assessment of where the Astros will be?
I mean, knowing that baseball is unpredictable and anything could happen, even if you do find yourself 10 games out at some point in May, the likelihood, the probability of resurrecting the season to the level that our fans have grown to expect over the last 7 years, it gets darker and dimmer pretty much every day. It could happen. We certainly could. And that's the frustrating thing, I guess. This team has enough talent in individual pieces to run off 10 games in a row. That would not be just the most bizarre thing in the world. But to date, they have not put together a complete game, a complete series, if you want to give them credit for Colorado. That was even just a 2-game kind of, we're playing a team worse than us, and there's not too many teams worse than the Astros right now. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. And I think for the first time in 7 years, the Astros are going to have to look long and hard about what they're doing for 2026 or 2025 versus how we're going to finish out this season and reclaim things, because you're going to get to the point after Memorial Day, you're staring at the All-Star break 6 weeks after that, and then it's a tough road that they've created for themselves.
Brian, when is that point for you then that they have to make a hard decision? I know that we use Memorial Day sort of as an arbitrary day to start deciding whether we're concerned or not. To your point, to Andy's point anyway, for as unsurprising as they've been so far this season, as far as not meeting expectations, they could flip the switch and then be unsurprising going the other way and all of a sudden start putting things together. So what is that point for you when you're like, okay, now is the time to say we have to go start thinking about 25 and 26 and 27? Give me a games back and a date for you.
I think that's the All-Star break. The measure I'm still not into looking at the division and sort of how far they're back, because the question for me is sort of what pace do they play the rest of the season? And we talked about if they play at the pace they did last year, where they're at a 90-win pace, I think I put them at like 83 wins, which maybe if, the Stars get if, the Stars are in alignment, they could make the playoffs there, but it's exceedingly unlikely. If they play at a 95-win pace, there's something like 87 wins, which is possible to make the playoffs at that. They need to play at a 100-win pace. So that's why 500 weeks like this week are frustrating, because they played at such a poor pace other than that. But, on the sort of long-term question of looking ahead to next year, it's a veteran team with lots of eggs in the basket of this year. And I think a pretty strong belief that they're better than what they've seen so far. So
I'm not sure anybody would even disagree with that. I think I'm not sure anybody disagrees that they have not played up to their record.
Yeah.
Talent up to the record, excuse me.
Yeah. And there's two reasons for that. One is they're 1-9 in one-run games. And so, A, they played a lot of one-run games already. And B, they're getting, their teeth kicked in them. That, should theoretically turn around at some point. But when that point is an open question. And you've got players who are underperforming, who you have reasonable expectations. You have not just reasonable expectations. You have every expectation they'll play better than they did in the first, quarter of the season. And so there's reason to think, right, you could be at a reasonable record at the All-Star break and say, hey, let's just put our chips in and go for it, because we're already pot committed. I mean, in many ways, the Verlander trade last year made them pot committed to this season. And they don't need to pull out of that now. They can pull out of that in July if necessary.
Okay.
The other side of this is the Astros had a 500 week this week. And while that's disappointing, they played two really good teams during that 6-game stretch, came out 500. Yes, we could have won yesterday. It would have felt better. They haven't had a 500 week this season yet. So if you're looking for progress, that is progress compared to the next best week where we went, I think, 3-4 against a collection of the Rangers and somebody else. This has been the best week of the season. So you can make that can feel bad. That can be the reason Brian's wearing a suit because I thought he was going to eulogize us this morning. But there is, if there's light, it's that some aspects of the team are starting to play better together on the field. Just not always the same ones every day.
Yeah, and there's a glass half empty. There's a glass half full perspective. That there's also a glass half empty. If the best week of your season's 3-3, yeah. I mean that's why you're at a 333 winning percentage or whatever it is. They need to, we need to have 4 and 2 weeks. They need to have weeks where they need to, as James talked about this last week, they need to stack series wins together. And for a moment, it looked like they were doing that. And then, yesterday, that's part of why yesterday was such a kick in the teeth because you could, hey.
Yeah, and I know, Brian, I get, I get what you're saying too about you're not looking at stats, you're still looking at trying end of year win totals. I think not standings. I think the only thing that gives the reason why I'm looking at standings maybe is the solace of you're still only 7 games back. You've still got 10 games against the Mariners, and you still have got 7 games against the Rangers. So, and those are teams that outside of playing the Astros haven't really played all that great of baseball themselves. It's just magnified because of how poorly the Astros have. So to me, it's like this is a tangible thing that you can put in front of you and say, if you win X number of games, you can make this happen. I do want to talk about some individual performances, and we'll start with something good because I think we all have to, give Singleton a pat on the back. Not even a guess. I mean, Singleton, I think, has outperformed. The 3 of us all thought this was going to continue to be a hole at first base, and he's really quite stepped up. McTaggart had his numbers out there, and they were really good for basically the week that he's been here. Andy, a little bit on Singleton's performance, and do you feel like this is essentially one more feather in the we don't think that Abreu is going to really come back at all cap?
First question last question first. I don't think Abreu is coming back, but I think he's going to be given every opportunity to. But this move was talked about so widely when it happened, the optioning to West Palm, because it doesn't happen very often, and there's not just a whole history of success stories with a veteran of his stature and his tenure going to Florida to figure things out mid-season. And I have no animus towards Jose Abreu. Father Time, as we talk about, is undefeated. As far as John Singleton, great, and I hope he continues it. I am dubious because while he has had a very good week as the full-time starter, his history says that this is not the norm. And maybe it's a situation where he gets consistent playing time and he's going to figure out things against left-handed pitching, and that's not going to be an issue. So, keep knocking on wood until it stops, but he's not the long-term future there. And I think it's one of the weird things about the Astros farm system. We know it's depleted, but the inability to develop a first baseman, even just a league average first baseman over the last 5-6 years has been really kind of bizarre. I think Seth Beer was the last one anybody was even quasi excited about. And that was really just so people could get a jersey that said Beer on it.
That he did not pick number 69 is always, disappointing to me.
Just irritating. It was right there for you too, Seth.
Nice.
It's just right there. Yeah, I agree. I will say this, though, Brian. One of the things that you at least saw out of Singleton was some pretty good defensive plays. He had a couple of good scoops.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, we had plays that Abreu has not made at all this year. And so I'm on record saying, look, if the choices are the choices we've had, offensive production at first place isn't going to happen no matter what. I'd at least like to have a competent defensive first baseman, and at least it seems like there's at least that for now.
Yeah, I mean, Abreu was killing it, right? He was cost you a run of war, a game of war within a month of a season, which is exceedingly hard to do.
And that's the card game, right? Where you flip the game
right.
of war. Yeah,
that's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, kept losing at
that's
that,
battle.
Which is again,
it's a battle.
Mm-hmm.
Not to be
battle
confused
some,
with
war to others.
It's
I
like
think
that.
battle is at Fangraphs and war is at Baseball Reference. Not important here. this year. So hey, you got a big home run yesterday. You got a big home run. You got some big hits from Singleton this week. It was nice to see because, again, I'm with Andy. I'm skeptical this can last. He's also 33, so this isn't a new young prospect. But it was not. It was helpful to get production at first base. That was key, particularly to the win against the Guardians on Tuesday night, getting the 3-run home run. They needed every run that game. And we'll see. We haven't gotten anything. We haven't Trey Cabbage can play first base, and we haven't gotten anything from. He had a hit, I think, a big hit in Mexico City, but didn't play much this week. So, again, we'll see what we get. I guess Dubon's going to play some first base, and that could be worthwhile.
Yeah, it's definitely the concern is obviously we're still figuring all of this out, and it's May. As we learned in the movie The Natural, that losing is a disease, and it's as contagious as syphilis and all the other ones. And so it seems like what began with a disease from Abreu that was passed to Bregman and is now passed to Alvarez. And until the home run, I think Tucker was 0 for his last 17 before the home run. It does seem like outside of Jose Altuve, which for some reason people are mad that he didn't run out one ground ball because apparently it was encouraging Tucker to not run out ground balls. And I'm like, this is not middle school baseball. I don't think peer pressure factors in. And by the way, I would rather Jose Altuve not run out routine ground balls and pull hamstrings at 34 years old. I'd rather him stay around and run when he knows he's going to drag bunt, but that's just me and being practical. But what is going on? It seems like it doesn't seem like it seems like what used to be a contagious wave of success for this team. Now it's a wave of ineptitude at the plate. Brian, we'll let you go first.
Yeah. Hey, maybe you could argue it's not ineptitude at the plate. What team leads the American League in batting average?
Houston Astros.
That's right. What team is second in the American League on base percentage? It's the Houston Astros. What team is second in slugging and OPS? It's the Houston Astros. And what team is eighth in runs scored? And that's sort of the problem there, right? Is that, hey, they're doing all sorts of good things, particularly with.
Do they give extra credit for winning statistics but not scoring runs?
No, they give you the opposite. That you actually lose at that. The good news is that that should even out in the long run. The bad news is this team doesn't have the long run. They need this to sort of come together sooner rather than later. So, again, Tuesday against the Guardians, they scored 10 runs. While giving up 9 and had lots of bases. And then you saw sort of Friday, you had that rally of them just taking a bunch of walks and the bunt base hit and all sorts of sacrifice fly run, all sorts of sort of, different things. But yeah, it's not been consistent. Part of that is because it's just hard to be that consistent in baseball, I guess, unless you play in Mexico City all the time. Again, hey, they need this to even out sooner rather than later. Is there a mental thing to that? I can't tell from the outside. I can, I'm neither trained in it nor can make it work. But
have you ever played one on TV, a psychiatrist? I know you didn't. No.
So I have a doctorate, but it is not in psychiatry.
Okay.
But I have watched lots of Cheers with Dr. Fraser Crane. So
okay, well there you go, Andy.
You're wearing a suit coat today, so I assume you're smarter than the two of us. Just make something up.
Or a funeral director.
We never would have. Well, that might be what we'll need around here. Andy, to that point, we've gotten to we have two what were supposed to be major contributors that have just fallen off the face of the earth right now. And look, he honestly pitched a good game yesterday, notwithstanding, except he still wasn't able to get past the 5th inning. But Hunter Brown looks lost, and Bregman somehow looks more lost. I don't know what's going on with either of those, but let's go Brown first and then Bregman. What would you be doing if you were Dana Brown, Joe Espada in regards to both of those players?
Well, I would open up my bank account every morning and look at it and go, "This is nice. This is better than what I was doing yesterday." So that's the first.
Hey, raise your hand if one of y'all is a Catholic high school teacher. I don't want to hear about bank accounts, guys.
I'd also like to note that nobody in a sport coat would use the word "loster."
So I at least did it on purpose, even though I am actually a professional and paid screenwriter. I did that on purpose.
for effect. I know.
Yeah.
Starting with Hunter Brown, I am a proponent of Hunter Brown being in Sugarland as soon as Christian Javier comes back from the IL, which I assume will be whatever his next turn in the rotation is. Brown has an issue now. Let's say, to his credit, he got out of the first inning without giving up runs, although he threw a lot of pitches. And we're now at that stage of the Hunter Brown experience where economy of pitches is not something he does real well because he doesn't throw strikes. And that, to me, is the biggest problem watching Hunter Brown this year. He's had games where this has not been exactly the case, but he doesn't seem to trust his fastball, which is his best pitch. He is kind of fallen in love, and maybe it's from direction from our pitching staff about this is what you need to do to be successful in the stadium and da-da-da-da. But if I could throw a baseball 98 miles an hour and I could throw it for strikes, that should be my primary pitch, and everything else should be setting that up. And maybe he's even good enough to do that in the reverse where it sets up a slider or something else. But he's not doing any of that right now. He's nibbling. It doesn't look like he trusts his fastball, and I think he needs a reset. Now, I don't think there's any shame at the stage he is in his career,
Right,
to go back to Sugarland for a month and just figure out how to be a pitcher in a low consequence environment, because it feels like he is in his head more than anybody else about, a pitcher at his best. And you're talking the Greg Maddoxes of the world. And I'm sorry, Astros fans of a certain vintage.
yeah, but just like
Our vintage.
But he would dissect you, and he didn't even have great stuff, but he would dissect you because he was always ahead of you mentally. Hunter Brown doesn't have that right now. And I don't know that he ever will be to the Greg Maddox level, but he's got to get to the point where he is the one in charge of those plate appearances for the batter and not the other way around. And that's what it feels like is happening.
But to your point, in 2022, he was often a leverage reliever where he was expected to go in and immediately throw strikes, and he did that. I do sense that a lot of it was his problem is a lot of what Arrietty's problem was, and a lot of what France's problem was of getting ahead 0-2 and then not throwing strikes until you're 3-2, and now you're trying to do something. I know that 0-2 you probably shouldn't give anybody to hit, but maybe if you bury one, then come at you, like you said, Andy, with a 98 mile an hour fastball. But
how many times have we seen, even in the last week, what we all consider probably our best player, this season notwithstanding, Yordan Alvarez, just watch pitches directly over the plate for called strikes? Pitchers have the ability to sequence things in a certain way or not sequence things in a certain way to fool hitters. We don't have that. And I don't know if it's something we emphasize or something that Hunter Brown specifically just isn't good at, but that's the next step for him because he has the pitches. He has to throw strikes, and he has to have the mental game that it's not there yet. And I think when we talk about, the waterfall of bad things continuing to happen, it's because that mental game is weak. And I know none of us are qualified to do that and blah, 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 blah. I'm just talking as a fan. That's what I'm seeing. The other issue, Alex Bregman, I'm at a complete loss, and I'm sure he is too. And you can see it on his face.
I'm actually not. I know exactly what is going on.
Okay. I am sure that Dana Brown would like an email.
No, well, I mean, because there was a couple of interviews for him during spring training that I went, because I remember seeing them and I went back and watched, and he did not tweak his swing over the break, over the off season. He says he completely revamped everything that he does at the plate, which I think is why he looks out of sorts. It's the reason why he's either pounding it into the ground or popping things up, because he's gone back and rather than for some reason got convinced that what he was doing for the rest of his career was wrong, and he's completely redone it. And I'm not sure, Andy or Brian, that we're going to see a return to the Alex Bregman we know until the offseason when he's playing with another team. I don't know that he's going to be able to fix it in the regular.
Well, if this continues, there's a much better chance of us signing him.
It's true. Brian, sorry, I know I cut you off, Andy, but
actually, Andy's right. The chances he signs a 1-year contract, as opposed to the over 5-year contracts that Jim Crane won't sign, but that's sort of inside. Yeah, I mean, Hunter Brown, he has several issues, but the biggest issue is the one Andy identified. He doesn't throw enough strikes. He's at 6 walks per 9 innings. That's a walk. That's a walk. 2 walks every 3 innings. He's also giving up a ton of hits. Opponents have 1,000 OPS against him and lots of sort of on it. And so it's not just plenty of balls are falling in, but that's because they're hitting them hard. So yeah, a reset in AAA might work, but again, they need Christian Javier, who did have a rehab start in Corpus on Saturday. They need him back to do that.
And before you start crapping and before people online start crapping on the results of his rehab start, JV had the same results on his rehab start and pitched great. You don't go down to rehab starts to try to win games. You work on things.
Yeah. And to win those and to wear those awesome Western style uniforms. That
I want one so
on
bad.
Saturday. So yeah, no, that seems, that was a thing. So that's looked more like a John Waters movie, I thought, than actual baseball uniform.
It is the state of the Astros. The most exciting thing this weekend was their AA affiliates alternate uniforms for rodeo.
or the AAA affiliate dropping these sweet babies over the week.
Well, they haven't even worn those in a game yet.
I know, but you and I were Johnny on the spot, weren't we, buddy?
Getting excited. Yes, I've already got my hat.
Yeah.
No, it's just I do think that losing is contagious because that was the theme, into these two questions. I do think that when bad things happen, it feels like they happen in bunches. And the Astros have had 6 weeks of bad things happening to them on the baseball field. That could turn around. Most of us are hoping it's going to turn around. And I think there's some reasons that it's probably going to turn around. But in the individual cases of players like Alex Bregman, I don't know what's going to fix that. He's not going to accept a assignment to West Palm to go figure things out, nor should he. That shouldn't be a thing.
No.
And I know the DFA crowd, which is the first, that is just we're DFAing. We have DFA'd our entire team at some point in these 6 weeks. If you go through Twitter, and I'm not going to do this, you could pull up a tweet from somebody saying this person should be DFA'd, and we would have 0 players on our roster, except Joey Loperfido. I think he's safe right now.
This is why random people shouldn't be your GM.
It's funny because I usually have a pretty decent rapport and reputation on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it. Mm-hmm. But I had the audacity to question why Espada went Abreu in the 8th and not Presley. And then I got destroyed by some people who I think maybe were just looking for clout. I don't know. I don't even know who these guys were. One guy goes by Topher, and I'm like, okay, who goes by Topher and is an adult for real? Unless you're Topher Grace. And then you do In Good Company. And that was a pretty good underrated movie. I recommend seeing it. But
and Topher Grace is a Christopher, by the way. So really there's an odd choice there.
It's still an odd choice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's still an odd choice. But the idea that I was trying to bring up is that it seems to me that when your team is unsettled and your bullpen is underperforming, keeping people in roles they're used to being in might be the step towards success. And everybody was rested. I don't know why it wasn't. They didn't lose the game because Abreu was the reliever, right? Mm-hmm. I just don't fully understand. And I think that's a good question. I think it's a logical question of when nobody's going completely right, why mess things up by also putting them in positions they're not used to pitching in? And we've seen it anecdotally anytime we've seen a closer pitching a non-closer situation for the last 3 years, they've not pitched well. So it just does. I am not in any way, shape, or form an anti-Espada guy. I don't think you can judge what a guy can do managerial with this team playing this badly this soon into a career. But it's at least a good question to say, why didn't you just go by what everybody's at least comfortable with doing right now? Andy, you want to respond to me?
I mean, I think Espada has to own part of this, right? And what we're seeing is a rookie manager. That's why there is so much turnover amongst the manager ranks. And the Astros have been blessed with stability. The only reason there was a move even from to Dusty Baker when we acquired Dusty Baker is because we fired our manager for something that had nothing to do with on-field performance. Finding a manager who can do everything, pull the strings correctly is an incredibly difficult job. That's why there's so much movement almost every year in regards to that position across Major League Baseball. And that's why there's only 30 of those jobs right now. So I think that Espada is not without blame, but I also think when your team is struggling the way it is, you try things, you reach for things, and he is probably leading a little bit more with his gut than he should.
Especially when your gut says Brian Abreu, who's been kind of a hot mess.
Yeah, but I don't know that Presley's been dramatically better, so I don't know that that's more the problem than anything else.
Yeah, totally.
It's how you solved the Dusty Baker conundrum in 2022. You gave him a bullpen full of great options. It's much easier to pull those strings. Joe Espada is not blessed with a bullpen full of great options. I don't know that he's blessed with any options as far as the 8th and 9th inning go. I would feel more comfortable at this point with Seth Martinez coming in to save a game than I would with Josh Hader or Brian Abreu or Brian Presley. And that is the biggest issue that this team has right now. The offense is going to be what the offense is. But even when you get a lead, you scratch up and get a lead like you did yesterday, and they blow it. That's deflating for the whole franchise, and that's deflating enough to carry into a series on the road against the Yankees, who, for a lot of reasons, really want to beat us these 3 games coming up this week.
Yeah, Brian, Hader throws one right down the pipe. I don't look. That's not why you lose the game. However, what we have been told the strength of this Astros team is get that bullpen a lead. It doesn't matter what the lead is, and you're going to win the game. And that actually hasn't happened almost as many times as it has. I mean, I think 8 blown saves now. Is that Hader? Is that Yonder Diaz? Is that what is going on there?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, look at the choices, right? Hader's got a 6.14 ERA, Presley 5.27, Abreu 4.32. So,
Tay Scott, baby.
Yeah. And Seth Martinez, those are your, as we all predicted. These are, people who've been really effective, not because smoke and mirrors, but because they have, really devastating stuff in the bullpen. And some of it is they're walking a few too many guys, and some of it's just, in case of Abreu, bad luck. I don't know if that was a balk yesterday. Does anyone know it was a balk? The umpire does, but
Does he?
I still don't know. I mean, look, I've been watching baseball forever, and I'm still not sure I could tell you a balk from a not a balk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Key to that, again, don't give up 2 singles, but giving up singles is kind of just the ball found the hole, right?
But don't hit a guy.
Yeah, don't hit a guy, right? Don't let guys on base, strike guys out. They're striking guys out in the bullpen. It's so I think it'll over the long run be fine. But I keep coming back to this point. This team no longer has the long run. They need to get it right as soon as possible.
Well, okay, so let's finish this up. And how about this? I want everybody's final thought to update their prediction of where they think the Astros are going to be sitting at the end of the season, and give your honest best assessment. And we'll begin, Andy, with you as we wrap up.
As we sit right now, I think we'll be very lucky to be a 500 team.
Okay.
And that is the way the AL West is constructed. There's not going to be a wild card team coming out of there. And yes, a million things could happen. There are still 130 baseball games left. So anything I say right now has just as good a chance of happening as not happening, and probably worse of a chance of not happening because I'm bad at predictions. But this team is going to have to struggle and fix something to get to 500. And I think they can do that. But the whole 90 win calculation or any of those kind of things, that's out the window until you get to 500. So I'm just hoping for 500 at this point.
Brian?
Over the last 2 years combined, there are slightly above 500 teams. So 84 wins.
And I'm going to stay on the bullish part of it. I think that lots of things even out. I think including some of the bad luck the Astros have had with injuries and whatnot could also hit the Mariners. I think the Astros could still end up at 92 wins and win the division. So I'm going to stay there. For Brian, for Andy, we will be back next week, hopefully after a much better week. The Astros have often cured what ails them by going to play at Yankee Stadium. So hopefully we'll be there. Brian, are you going to go to any of the games at Yankee Stadium?
Thursday, though, it's a 5:00 game, so I will get in the second inning.
All right. Well, Brian, you bring all the good mojo with us. Or if they're winning when you walk in, turn around and leave. For Brian, for Andy, I'm Jim Christopher. This is Go Astros. 92 wins, baby. Go Stros. All right.